Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, everybody. This is Yaqeen Institute's weekly live stream. I'm your host, Imam Fakini. Welcome to the program. Very, very important show that we have tonight. Obviously, our sister Aysenur, Ezgi, Eygi is on all of our minds here in the U.S. Our latest martyr from our community who was murdered in cold blood by the IDF in the West Bank. We'll be talking extensively about that. We're going to have a guest from CAIR to help talk about the situation who's local to that area. I know a lot of people who have either knew her directly or knew people who knew her have reached out to me in the past week, giving me a portrait of her courageous life, and we'll be talking a lot about her legacy and what we can all learn from it. May Allah shower her in mercy and accept her sacrifice. We're also going to be talking about some of the tensions that are boiling over when it comes to the lack of let's say people have run out of patience. There are some people, such as in Jordan and in other places, I think now Egypt, that have taken on sort of vigilante acts despite their government attempting to suppress them. We'll talk about that. We will have our normal segments on the Quran and Tafsir going over today, Surah Ikhlas, and then also the atomic habits. We'll be talking about how to make our habits more attractive, and specifically the power of social norms. But before that, as always, let's hit the chat. This is your opportunity to ask whatever questions you want. Let's say hi to everybody. As someone has said, we'll say hi to the whole ummah, because the whole ummah usually shows up, mashallah, tabarakallah. Atiya is first in the door. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Zahir Yunus from London. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Shayma Budadi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan, kaydira labats alaik. Hope you're well. Commentaries here, Zahir Yunus. Yes, good to have you with us. Nasr Mahmoud, Rahma Baluch, Balu Bath, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Rahma Baluch from Durham, North Carolina. Alhamdulillah, all things considered, we thank Allah for the opportunity to distinguish ourselves and to try to work to what He is happy with. Sara is back. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Sara. Happy to have your great questions with us as always. And starting right away, Sada asks, have you ever heard of Graham E. Fuller? Your opinion on him and his book, A World Without Islam? If so, your thoughts? Nope. I mean, I've vaguely heard of the book. I haven't read it. Not really familiar with the author, so I plead the fifth. Rick Rashid, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Canada. Good to have you back with us. Muhammad Aziz Ar-Rahman, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Who else we have? Muhammad Aziz. Yes, okay. Munira Hayati Mukhtar, wa alaikum salam from Malaysia. Salamat datang. Wonderful place, wonderful people. Glad to have you with us. Amina, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. Fatima Muhammad from Trinidad, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Who else do we have? Someone who's a bunch of numbers for your username. Welcome to the program. Salihah from Atlanta, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Good to have you back again. I see a lot of familiar faces, or familiar usernames at least. Nabisa, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the program. Dark Phoenix from Maryland, from Baltimore, Maryland. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Good to have you with us. Okay, Zahir Yunus has a question. Imam Tam, I've been reflecting on Aysenur's martyrdom and its broader implications. How can we better understand the legacy of figures like Aysenur in the context of current geopolitical tensions? We're going to talk more about this. This is a dedicated segment of the program. But one of the things that I've been hitting on last weekend, I was in Houston and then to Chicago, meeting with a lot of the youth, meeting with a lot of sort of the Muslim American community's leaders, and discussing martyrdom as a paradigm, right? We need to be prepared to sacrifice and to pay the ultimate sacrifice. I firmly believe that. I don't think anything gets done if you don't have that attitude. And that's, I think, one of the main takeaways from Sister Aysenur. And I know that one of her final sort of requests, or maybe not requests, but something that she said to someone that she knew that she was in contact with, was that we need to do more. And I don't think that you can really effectively make change if you're not willing to pay the ultimate price and to sacrifice everything. And not that every single one of us will have to end up sacrificing everything, but that is definitely, if we're talking about tearing down the system of the power structures of Zionism and Islamophobia and everything that is securitizing Muslims across the world and criminalizing Islam and criminalizing us, and creating this sort of plausibility structure within which Palestine can be occupied. If we really want to help bring it to an end, then we need to be prepared to sacrifice everything. I ultimately believe that wholeheartedly. So that's my biggest takeaway, but I'm sure there's others, and we'll talk about it. Susie Barud, wa alaikum salam, from Seattle. So I know that Sister Aysenur, rahimahullah, was part of the Seattle community. We have over on our side of on this coast, the East Coast, we have some people who are also part of the Seattle community that come here seasonally. So welcome to the program. Seattle was a nice city, by the way. I was able to visit it this year. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Fatima77, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. A Qadri says, wa alaikum salam, on the anniversary of 9/11, wanted to see what's the best way to engage, want to express sorrow for lives lost while also being outspoken about the countless Muslim victims of U.S. war on terror. Yeah, 100%. Well, here's the main point and the main takeaway, A Qadri, and that is that the United States, the most dangerous thing to the United States of America is its own foreign policy, period. Put it up on the wall. Put it in lights, put it on billboards, whatever you need to do. That message has to be, there is no sort of course, Islam does not condone the targeting of civilians, true civilians, not fake civilians like some people like Israel try to fudge those boundaries and use human shields and these sorts of things. We're talking about actual civilians. Islam is completely against the targeting of civilians. However, the United States has to have a reckoning with its own foreign policy. There is no doubt that 9/11 does not happen without the foreign policy of the United States. How do we know? We have the explicit writings of the person who masterminded the attack, Osama bin Laden, who wrote a whole manifesto, and what he is complaining about, as many people learned this year on TikTok, many young people, Gen Zers and below, learned that his main complaint was the foreign policy of the United States of America. And as Muslims, we've obviously gone through the process of condemning that particular act, and that's not something that we support. It's not something that's legitimate Islamically. However, if the United States does not want to make itself a target, then it has to stop destabilizing the Middle East. It has to get out of the Middle East, all the military bases, all of the meddling, all of the intervention within its politics and the coups and the everything that it's doing. It has to get out, and that is the absolute safest way the best way for people in the United States to stay safe. How can Zahir Yunus says, how can individuals and communities effectively apply the principles from Atomic Habits to create positive changes? Well, let's talk about it when we get there, inshallah. I mean, it's a good question, but it's kind of deep. Nusayba Qasim, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Welcome. Seamus says, seems like Netanyahu has decided, by the way, wa alaikum salam, Seamus, good to see you. Seems like Netanyahu has decided it is perfect time to implement plans that will secure long-term security for IL. I'm not sure when these people use these little letters what they mean. They did airdrop mission for Syrian-Lebanese border and kidnapped a scientist. Stuff that I don't know, Seamus. I haven't been paying attention to that. Okay, for Israel. Okay, I see. Yeah, I mean, well, there's a game of chicken that's being played. I mean, it's like sort of a high-stakes situation where Netanyahu is, he is an accelerationist of sorts, to say that, he's going for everything. Okay, either he's going to win everything or he's going to lose everything. And I think one of the hopeful things about the last 11 months is to see how quickly the house of cards of support for Israel is falling apart. That doesn't mean that we're even halfway there, but we've seen the political support and the mask be ripped off and all of these things. Israel is under the highest scrutiny, or the most amount of scrutiny, and the most fundamental scrutiny, like scrutiny about the very idea of Israel. Whether it should have existed in the first place. We haven't seen this type of thing, at least in Western discourses. The Overton window has shifted, okay? And that's a positive thing, and we should welcome that. Nope. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Your username makes me laugh. Muhammad Ibnu, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Hi barakatuh. Let's see, we have Wasi Ahmed. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you want us to do there, Wasi. Are we supposed to continue watching the slaughter on our phones and just say meaningless words that fall on deaf ears? I mean, come on, dude. Like, that's very rhetorical. Like, am I going to say, yes, actually, we're supposed to keep saying meaningless words? No, but there needs to be a critical assessment of strategy and how we're going to get to the objective that we want to get to, right? And there might be discourse involved in that, and those words are not meaningless. Yes, there are some people that are just saying thoughts and prayers, raise your hands, dua. and we're not denigrating dua here, but there are some people that make it a false dilemma, saying that the only thing that we can do is dua, where we have rights, we have political options in the United States. The United States is where the genocide is coming from and being supported and funded by, and we have duties that we have to absolutely do when it comes to building political power and doing everything possible to change the foreign policy of the United States. That is completely granted, right? However, not people might criticize some of the steps involved in that process and say, well, what you're just doing is useless, etc. And that would not be true. So if by gathering the 313, if by that you mean getting people together to exercise our political power to stop the genocide, to change the foreign policy of the United States, then I agree with you. All right, let's see what we got. Julia, Abdul Jalil, wa alaikum salam rahmatullah from KL. Good to have you back with us. Fatima 77 has a question. The hypocrisy of the United States leaders is right in our faces. Is there an Islamic perspective on this? Yes, absolutely there is. And I've just turned over a blog post for editing that should be out early next week, inshallah, talking about the way that American Muslims approach politics has to completely change. That we are in election season, and in election season, you see this dynamic where people, they're forced to settle, or at least they are told that out of fear of the other side and what the other side is going to do, that they have to settle for less. You can't have principles. You can't expect everything to change at once. You can't expect the end of the occupation or, an arms embargo on Israel. You have to just get in line and get behind the one party that, they're trying to tell us to support. And then we'll talk about that later. And that's completely false thinking. It's thinking that has tricked us time and time and time again, election after election after election. We need to change the way that we deal with politics. We need to look at politics as an exercise of building power and not trying to just ingratiate ourselves, which literally usually means humiliating ourselves to people who are in power and expect them to do what we want later on. And there's a very powerful example from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ that I use, that I'll go into when the blog post is out. It's the example, or the situation where the Muslims were marching on Mecca and they were about to conquer Mecca. And Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a, who is a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's a veteran of Badr, and he is somebody who has esteem, and his intentions are beyond question. We know that he is in Jannah. We know all these things. However, he made a political mistake during this time. He had family that were in Mecca, and he attempted to send a letter secretly through a servant to the Quraysh to warn them that the Muslims were about to march on Mecca and conquer it. The Prophet ﷺ was given revelation, and he ordered Ali and Al-Miqdad to go track down the servant and apprehend them and the letter. And so this is something that was a major deal. Once they brought it back, the companions were upset. The Prophet ﷺ asked for an explanation. Hatib explained himself, and he was ultimately forgiven because he did it out of a good intention. However, it was definitely a political mistake, which is why the Prophet ﷺ acted against it, first of all. And secondly, why companions like Umar ibn al-Khattab wanted to basically execute him for treason, even though, again, they were stopped. They didn't actually end up doing that, because that particular act showed a lack of sound political thinking. Hatib radiallahu anhu was basically assuming that if he did a favor for Quraysh, that Quraysh would do a favor for him. Yet he had no leverage or no guarantee that this would be true. It was pure, wishful thinking. This is exactly the political thinking of the Muslims in America up until now. We think that if we do favors for somebody, support somebody, prove our loyalty to somebody, that then they will like us and then they will protect us and do something for us. And that has not happened. Look at how loathsome we are to both parties. Look at how each party and each presidential candidate competes in demonstrating their love for Israel and demonstrating how little they care about Muslims. And Aysenur is a perfect example of that. How little, Biden not reaching out to the family, nothing going on when it comes to that. Like, this is a slap in the face. But we allow them to get away with it. We allow them to get away with it by not holding out, by not punishing them politically, by not approaching power in the proper way. So there's definitely an Islamic perspective on that. Michelle Rousseau, welcome to the program. Who else do we have? Okay, who else we go? Yeah, I mean, Wes, you got a point there when you're talking about taking our lexicon back. We talk about jihad and things like that. But jihad, and we'll talk about that. Actually, we're about to do a video with Yaqeen Institute. If you go into any book of fiqh, okay, jihad is i'zaz ad-din. Okay, it is bringing honor to the deen, bringing honor to the religion, and that has several practices tucked inside of it. Some of those practices are warfare and military. Other of those practices are not. Okay, there might be a situation where you're picking the most sound and the most likely to succeed tactic, and that is something like exercising political power in different ways that are not military or warfare. Okay, so it is true we do not characterize jihad. Okay, sometimes there's a caricature. The Islamophobists would want us to think that all jihad is just like Osama bin Laden and this sort of terrorism and things like that. That's not true. But then the other side, the other extreme is to say, oh, jihad is just washing the dishes, which is also not true. No, jihad is bringing honor to the religion. And there are many practices tucked within it, and those practices are selected due to their appropriateness given the circumstances. But I agree with you that we should not give up that word or surrender it to people who want to tuck it into the war on terror discourse, because if they criminalize jihad and they want to criminalize jihad, then it's just a stone's throw away to criminalizing Allahu Akbar, criminalizing the Quran itself, as some people have stated is their objective. Aisha Mukhtar, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, welcome to the program. Aminata Nungom Diop, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, we have a lot to talk about today. Glad you're here with us. Seamus brings up Shireen Abu Akle. Yes, we're going to talk about her as well. There's a pattern of behavior here. Aziz, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from Denver. Watermelon 76 from Detroit, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I might be coming to Detroit in October, inshallah ta'ala. MOR, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, also from Michigan. Latish Muhammad, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Salam. Salam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Amina Kasupovic, Kakoste, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Aisha Mukhtar. Let's see what we got here. Yes, that's a good point, Aisha. Aisha brings up, she's talking to Seamus and she's talking about the highlighting of her Turkish heritage as a way to distance the United States from any sort of responsibility and the fact that she was an American citizen. But that highlights the fact that her life is viewed as inconsequential and unimportant by the United States government. And we'll talk about that. Fatima Ghali from North Carolina, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yes, Fatima 77. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11 whatsoever. Muhammad Abu Ramadan, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Saleh asks, how can we make our voices stronger? By clicking up, by organizing ourselves. Laura, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from Al Maghrib. Ahlan wa sahlan, kaydira labat alaik. Hope you're well. Let's see. Abdul Wahid says, convey message of Islam to all people of the world and to everyone who will come. Also convey message of Islam to all world leaders. Yes, however, one of the things we have to make sure we get straight is that politics is not da'wah. If people come to Islam, alhamdulillah, and we always want even our enemies to come to Islam. But the Prophet ﷺ also did politics that was not da'wah or was, dealing with the reality on the ground. So sometimes we make mistakes by assuming that we approach all politics and political situations the way that we approach da'wah. And this is biryani diplomacy, and that's not good. And we'll talk about that, and I'm writing about that. MB from Hershey, PA, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. A. Kamil from Minnesota, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Seamus. Oh, I got you, Seamus. Valerie De Leon, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good to have you with us. I'm in Dallas next weekend, actually. I believe, if I recall correctly, that you're from the Dallas area. There's actually going to be a conference on educators or for educators on educating about Palestine that I'll be part of, inshallah ta'ala. Jane Da Silva saying, vote for Jill Stein 2024. She is for stopping the genocide and stopping all wars. This is Yaqeen Institute. It's a 501c3. I can't tell you who to vote for, but listen to Jane. Nusayba Qasim, I would never underestimate the power of dua either. Yes, very good. Who is really in control at the end of the day? I've become ever more reliant on Allah for the smallest of things since 10/7. That's beautifully said. And of course, I would never ever seek to belittle the power of dua. What I'm afraid of is certain da'is and religious leaders who push dua at the expense of taking care of their fard kifaya, because we also have furud kifaya when it comes to building capacity and building power and doing those other things. Everybody knows. I've never met a person that says that dua won't work. in the Muslim community. I don't know if that person exists, right? Everybody agrees that dua works and Allah is ultimately in control. However, we are responsible for doing more than that, and there's a lot of people not talking about what those other things are. What else we got? Seamus says, some tried to use Badri Sahaba's story for an excuse for those who do similar actions today. Yep, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Let's see. That's why, okay. Behind a third party, okay, people are chopping it up about election strategy. And it is true. Okay, we shouldn't go into that. There's a lot to say about certain candidates and their politics on other issues. There's a difference. I'll say this, Seamus, because Seamus brings up, Jill Stein's sort of attitudes and policies and positions on Syria, which she has retracted, by the way, officially. However, there is an important distinction to be made between voting for somebody like you think that you're just turning over everything to them and that's the person that you want to implement all their policies, versus voting for somebody because you know it's going to have a certain effect on the terrain, the entire terrain of political calculus of everybody. So those are two things, right? And there are separate things. Juju from SoCal, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. Sam Ahad, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. Ameen. We have Maryam from Kuwait. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shafi from Florida. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ameen. Zahir Yunus. Zahir Yunus says, let Aysenur's story be a call to action for greater awareness and meaningful change. Allahu Akbar. As we strive to confront the systemic issues that perpetuate such tragedies. Boom. Put it in lights. I like it. Very good. Nope asks, what podcast did Imam Tom say he had shared his election opinion on recently? LOL. That would be Dr. Shadi al-Masri's podcast, Safina Society. I think he calls the podcast Nothing But Facts. Salam says, Imam Tom, was my question inappropriate? I think you skipped me. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't see your question. Ask it again. Someone told me it's halal, but there's ikhtilaf. I wanted to make sure by asking you. I'm sorry. I didn't see it. Could you ask it again? Thank you, Valerie. A. Qadri says, really don't understand the mentality of Muslims who are voting for Kamala. Yeah, me neither. Well, actually, I can't say that. I do understand it. It's just wrong. Just because she made token gestures doesn't absolve her of complicity. 100%. She is actively in power. She is actively part of the administration that is committing the genocide, right? And she has stated her goals and her support for Israel time and time again. There's really no mystery going on here. Some people are looking for the smallest excuse to run back to their abusers. Very good. Seamus reminds us of Nuruddin Zengi's actions before Salah ad-Din. Good. Nice. Juju says, I see Muslims giving others nasiha on social media, maybe with good intentions, but it sometimes comes off as hypercritical. How do you draw the line between nasiha and staying quiet? Good. Well, what nasiha means literally is loyalty. Okay, that nasuha is sincerity and loyalty, right? That's why the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, what is nasiha? It's nasiha lillah wa li kitabihi wa li rasulihi, right? So how do you have nasiha to Allah if nasiha is just advice? That's not the correct, that's an overly specific translation. Nasiha is loyalty and sincerity. And so part of your loyalty and sincerity to somebody is to, if they're in error, to attempt to guide them away from error in the most beautiful way possible, in the way that's most likely that they would accept that sort of admonition, okay? Which I think answers your question. Furaha Mosi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. B says, since Zionist lobby is behind the politicians, we will need definitely to change our strategy to make our voices heard. Yes, there's a scenario where we need to tackle campaign finance, okay? The reason why AIPAC can buy politicians is because money buys elections. That's it. That's the way that the United States election law is set up. Money buys elections. If you're able to change that so that money no longer buys elections, AIPAC disappears. Iman, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Joining from the Maldives. Excellent. Apologies for the late hour for you, but welcome anyway. We're happy to have you with us. Aliyah Kojak, you came to see me in Houston. Alhamdulillah. I'm glad that you were able to catch the program. Qadi Aladdin, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Murad from Allentown, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, 100%. Very good. So we've run through all the comments. Allahu Akbar. It only took us 30 minutes this time. Salam to the Ummah. We do have the whole Ummah in the house, and we love the Ummah. And the Ummah, we are with the Ummah, and the Ummah is with us. That's true. Seamus brings a good point. Some people treat non-malicious, ignorant Muslims and hostile enemies with the same tone, right? وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُم, right? Allah says in Surah Al-Kahf to be patient with the people who call towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have standards and hold people accountable, especially when they have sickness in their hearts and they love the dunya too much. Iraj Khan, good point. It's 5:38. That's not that bad, Iman. It's Fajr time. You're part of your Fajr routine. Miracle Quran. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You're 100% right, Letitia. Last point about the mediation team. Yes, the United States, it's a lie for the United States to pretend like it is a mediator in this conflict. The United States is a perpetrator in this conflict. They do not have an unbiased sort of role to play. They are on one side. And so how are you going to let somebody who's on one side be a mediator, quote unquote? Anyway, here we go, guys. Let's kick it to current events. Our main headline, Sister Aysenur, Ezgi, Eygi, may Allah shower her with mercy and bring succor and solace to her family and to all of those who knew her. Everybody who I've talked to the past week has said what an amazing and inspiring person she was. Aysenur was gunned down in cold blood by the IDF in the West Bank. She is a U.S. citizen and an activist. She was murdered during a protest by a single sniper bullet to the head. This is not an isolated incident. This is something that is a regular practice of the Israeli occupying forces. However, as we're going to see very, very soon, the response has been completely weak because the racket that is the military-industrial complex and its intersection with the occupation of Palestine is too lucrative. For most politicians to even pretend that they care. So let's go. Oh, awesome. Excellent. Wonderful. Let's cut, folks in the studio. Let's cut to the images or the video of her funeral. So one of the most powerful things that I saw was Sister Aysenur was given her last rites in Palestine. Allahu Akbar. And I have to say, like, I seriously, goosebumps when I first saw this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all a good end, like Sister Aysenur. You know, when we look at it from a materialistic perspective, we say that yes, there is a tragedy to this. However, think about it. You are somebody who went to Palestine in solidarity with the people of Palestine, and now you die a hero, and you're buried in Palestine. This is something that is, honestly, it's something to aspire to, in a sense. Like, it is something that is very, very humbling and touches the heart. Now, we also have a reaction from somebody who was on the ground with her that will describe to us sort of the circumstances and the situation. Let's cut to that, gentlemen.
There were 2 shots fired from the rooftop. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know the difference in sound between tear gas, rubber-coated bullets, live ammunition. These were 2 separate shots of live ammunition, shot one after the other. The first one hit a metal object, and then a young man from the village in his thigh. And then I heard another shot. And then I heard people calling my name in English. I found her lying on the ground beside the tree, bleeding from her head. I put my hand under her head to try and stop the bleeding. I took her pulse. She had a very weak pulse. We called the ambulance. From there, we evacuated her to the village's medical center, where the doctor came into the ambulance and continued into the hospital, where they tried to resuscitate her, but failed.
La ilaha illallah. Now, given this horrendous act, which obviously it's not horrendous for her afterlife, but it's horrendous in the sense of the injustice that that her demise is predicated upon. The response to the United States government has been complete cowardice and unaccountable nonsense. That the same sort of deflection and denial and gaslighting that we have seen and come to get used to from the past 11 months was on full display when it came to reporters questioning the White House and the White House staff representatives about what was going on. Let's cut to the clip where we have a confrontation between the, we have the response from the U.S. White House representative.
Each circumstance is unique and different, and anytime an American citizen or civilian loses their life, it is incredibly tragic. But the circumstances around how that happens is important. The facts matter, and I'm just not going to get ahead of the process as it relates to this.
Aysenur's family called for an independent investigation. Would you support this call?
So look, what you just heard me say to Simon, we expect Israel to make their findings public. We expect those findings to be shared, transparently and as thoroughly and as soon as possible. Beyond that, I'm just not going to get ahead of what those findings determine, and should that those require any additional steps needing to be.
So to get this straight, the United States is willing to perpetuate, and the United States president is willing to perpetuate atrocity propaganda, things that never happened on October 7th, such as beheaded babies, such as babies in ovens, such as all of this nonsense. And yet, when it comes to one of its own citizens being taken out by a single sniper bullet to the head, that all of a sudden we throw our hands up in the air and we become murji'ah. We become overcome with irja. We have no idea what happened. We're going to allow Israel to investigate itself. How many times has Israel been allowed to investigate itself? This is a very, very structurally similar thing to when police brutality happens in the United States, and we allow an internal investigation to take place. And I wonder what is going to be the result of that internal investigation, where people are shuffled around and there's some sort of PR around it, but nothing is done, which demonstrates to you the callous nature of the United States government and how indebted and controlled they are by their interests in the occupied territories and the Israeli project. And this is something that even Dwight Eisenhower, the former president of the United States way back in the 50s, warned people about as he exited office. He warned people about the military-industrial complex. He warned what would happen if war became profitable, and you see the money and the guns and the bombs flowing in one direction. Israel is a racket. The occupation of Palestine is a racket in which many U.S. politicians and their friends make a whole lot of money. And so then when a United States citizen dies, that United States citizen is not worth stopping the racket. That we will do whatever political cover we have to do in order to maneuver around to keep the racket going, the money flowing, the bombs flowing, and everything else. That's not to say that everybody is just about the money. There's other people who are in it for ideological reasons and things of this nature. But for sure, the occupation, the Israeli occupation of Palestine is so lucrative to the United States and to the elite of the United States that they are willing to allow American citizens to be murdered in cold blood and not do a thing about it. The government, just like we talk about the governments in the Middle East being against the interests of their people, the government of the United States of America is absolutely no different when it comes to being completely indifferent to what is actually good for their own citizens. Now, this is not, again, an isolated incident. This is Aysenur, rahimahullah, belongs to a long list of American citizens that the U.S. government has done nothing about and has allowed Israel to murder in cold blood, to act with complete impunity and not be held to any standards whatsoever, not even an independent investigation, just to be told, trust us, bro, it was a mistake. We don't know, what happened. It was confusing. So we have Rachel Corrie, obviously, and then Shireen Abu Akleh, and then now Aysenur, and there were others. There have been others. So we don't expect much from the United States government when it comes to holding Israel accountable. However, what we do know is that politically, we need to make the support of the Zionist occupation of Palestine so politically costly to the politicians of the United States that they will start holding these incidents accountable and will end them and will actually end all support for the genocidal occupation. And to join us, oh, we have one more thing to cover. We noticed, okay, let's go to the tweet by Sami Hamdi, our brother Sami Hamdi. One of the ways in which the media responded was to attempt to portray her as foreign. Now, it's true that she is of Turkish heritage, and actually, there's a very powerful video of Erdogan, commenting on the issue and expressing his dismay. Whatever you think of Erdogan, that is, the fact that you're being mentioned by heads of state in solidarity is something major. However, her Turkishness was used to distance herself from her Americanness and to basically explain that she was dispensable, that she was killable. And this attitude was taken even further by the Florida Republican, who, do we have that, guys? Do we have the Florida Republican's tweet when he said, basically, he called her a terrorist very, very, very brazenly and said, let them fire away. And is basically advocating to show you how crazy the situation has gotten and how nothing will change until we take back power from the people who are currently in power. That people are actually cheering. United States government officials are cheering on the murder of their own citizens in Palestine in order to tap dance for their masters. What a world that we live in. But that being said, we have a very special guest with us tonight. He is somebody who, when we reached out to the family of Sister Aysenur, they directed us to the executive director of CAIR Washington, Imran Siddiqui. Imran Siddiqui is a well-known human rights advocate and advocate for Muslims on the West Coast up in the Pacific Northwest. And he has joined our program today to help talk about sort of what's going on with the family, how is everybody getting on, what are the responses that we've seen from the government, and where we can go from here. Welcome to the program, Brother Imran.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So give us sort of a picture. I've heard a lot, but maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with Sister Aysenur. What was her sort of role in the community? What is she known for? And what is sort of the legacy that she leaves behind?
Yeah, may Allah accept her and give her the rank of a martyr, inshallah. This is obviously something that was really difficult for a lot of local activists. I did not know her personally. I moved here at the end of 2020. I was in Arizona prior to this, but from all accounts of, especially the younger folks that are here, subhanAllah, I mean, just to see the energy of the youth this past year during this genocide, they've really been, I think, leading us. The older generation is what I probably belong to now. In terms of what they've been doing on college campuses with the encampments and to a person, the fact that her name is Aysenur, like she was a beam of light to a lot of the folks in the activism community, going back to not only, standing for Palestine and Muslims, she was standing for, against the police brutality during the George Floyd protests back in 2020. She was back doing that. And she was probably in her early 20s during that time frame. During these latest encampments on campus, she was there, very visible. So many of the activists that I know through my work at CAIR that I interface with a lot, they've come across her. SubhanAllah, my nephew was up here visiting just a few months ago, and he attended a book talk, and he actually met her at that event. So every person that came in contact with her really speaks to just her level of determination, her principledness. And the thing is that we don't really think about just like what level of thought and care she put into this. She went into this situation where a lot of us don't have the intestinal fortitude to even put ourselves in our, the things we love in this dunya in harm's way, or to sacrifice to go out there. And she didn't go to Gaza. She went to the West Bank, and even in the West Bank, she knew that her life was in danger, and she had somebody appointed, somebody who I know, who I'm friends with, who I've done a lot of work with, a campus leader who was her point of contact in case any harm came to her. So she even thought, if I die, if some harm comes to me, I'm going to have all my ducks in a row, and I'm going to make sure that I have the correct spokesperson for me. I don't want my death to be made into something that it's not. I don't want the eyes to be taken off the genocide that's happening to our brothers and sisters over there.
Yeah, that's extremely significant. So maybe walk us through that tussle, because as we know, when something like this happens, the government is trying to spin its own narrative. The family is trying to represent, and the appointed representatives are trying to do justice and represent, what happened in the way that the deceased wants it to be represented. How has that been? How has been the response from either local government or federal government, and how has the family been trying to challenge the sweeping this under the rug, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, what we've seen over the past 11 months during this genocide, I don't think anything is necessarily surprising to us in terms of the words that come out of the government officials' mouths. So, I mean, first and foremost, I don't think anybody expected there to be just some miraculous turn of events. And this goes back, you mentioned Rachel Corrie, for example, who was martyred 20 years ago. Her family was on a call with me and many of the other local activists, trying to talk them through, okay, this is what you have to do here, leading us through like their trauma from the past. And when Rachel Corrie was brutally murdered 21 years ago, the government didn't really say anything. There's a whole long line of people you've seen, Shireen Abu Akleh, Furqan Dogan during the 2010 Freedom Flotilla. You have Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar, who was killed in Gaza as well, and another American that was killed there as well. And the government always, unfortunately, has a second set of principles when it comes to those who are Muslim or those who stand for Palestinian rights. And so I was just looking back at Twitter right now, when there was a little scuffle that was taking place between Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. The Biden administration sent out a tweet saying, if you harm an American, we will respond. And so when they're directing that ire towards a Muslim country or those who they deem to be their enemies, their tenor becomes, oh, we're going to take care of every American that's out there. But when it's an actual American that's killed by their ally, where's that same energy? That it doesn't exist. And there's been a response from some selected members of Congress, Pramila Jayapal, and some of the other local members of Congress. The first few days afterward, I mean, you would expect something if an American is killed overseas. As those of us who were born and raised here, I think we've been told that myth, growing up, that if something happened to me, I have this American passport, and that's like this is like gold basically across the world. But we have to really sort of demystify a lot of these thought processes. There's a second set of rules when it comes to us. And I mean, the Biden administration was very slow and deliberate. I think they've issued a few things today. It's still like very weasel words when it comes to how they're talking about it. We deplore the death of. They won't even like talk in the actual voice when Israel kills an American. They try to basically all levels of plausible deniability when it comes to Israel, and allowing themselves, while they're conducting a genocide, to investigate themselves is one of the most laughable things. And so I think the family from day one, centering the family has been extremely, extremely important. That's why we've sort of taken very careful steps in how we've approached media, not trying to be too out there and in your face. The family really wants there to be an independent investigation. They don't want Israel, obviously, to investigate their own crime, and B, like you said, America is providing the weaponry, it's providing the cover. They don't want America to necessarily investigate either. They want an independent investigator, and they want some type of accountability on a world stage. And they've been communicating through a variety of channels. We have these young activists who are acting as their spokespersons, and so we're just trying to push the envelope as much as we can, inshallah.
Yeah, mashallah. I'm amazed at how just deliberate it seems like Sister Aysenur was with everything. Like usually it's a moment of chaos, but like you said, you really can tell that she had everything lined up. That's really, really amazing. Now, when you talk about the family and the solidarity between the families of, say, Rachel Corrie and Sister Aysenur, is there any sense, or have you ever picked up on any sense of progress? I mean, Rachel Corrie was murdered at a different time, right, when there was a lot less scrutiny on Israel. There was no social media, right? And so these sorts of things, they have, I guess, let's say, they're much more easily accessible, and media has been more democratized since then. Do we get any sense that any progress is being made, or is it pretty much the same stuff all over again?
I think it's progress that's being made. I think the machinery of both parties, both major parties, to be quite frank, are, the leadership within each of the parties continues to just run interference for the occupation, and will continue to do so. You see a continual growth of voices who try to at least stand up, I think, within the political system. You try to see people who are even on a local level. Like, a lot of times we look at sort of the federal level elected officials. They're sort of stuck in their own thing. They receive funding from APAC and a lot of these different sources. But we need to. That was one of the things that was in the chat as well. I mean, we do need Muslim PACs as well. We need Muslims who are involved at all levels. Trying, if there's PACs that are out there doing, spending billions of dollars to do evil. I think APAC spent $100 million in this last election cycle to spread evil. We have the money and the resources within our community, try to, promote candidates who are doing good as well. I think that's one lesson. And I mean, it may not work out at the end, but it's not about that for us. At the end of the day, it's the effort, inshallah, that we make that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us for. So even if we're not necessarily seeing the progress, in our lifetime or in front of our faces, we at least have to use every mechanism at our disposal to try and move the meter. And I think, just last thing I would say on that is that, here locally, I would say it's changing. 70% of, at least the Democrats that were over here in this state in Washington supported a ceasefire, which a ceasefire is not necessarily the best thing in the world, but at least stopping the the mass killing that's taking place. And they voted to at their local Democrat convention to pass a ceasefire resolution. So that means that I think a lot of people on the ground level, at least, their conscience is shifting. So the mass conscience is shifting because they have more access to information. They have more access to social media in terms of the truth of what's coming out of Gaza and worldwide. So inshallah, hopefully it's heading in the right direction, but there's a lot of corruption still in the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, some of your points are really important. We have the duty to try, right? Regardless of whether we win or not. We definitely have, I believe, a religious obligation to try. Super PACs and sort of advocacy is one route. Electoral is another route. And there's other routes that for building political power that we need to stop spectating and get in the game and do what I agree, very capable of doing. If you look at the money that we've splashed into relief, or the money we splash into our masjids or our banquets or our big conferences every year, we definitely have the juice, as they say. We definitely have the ability to be putting 15% of our current expenditure into political sort of avenues. I want to throw sort of an open-ended question to you, and you can take it or leave it. You don't have to answer it. But imagine for a second we reach a day where U.S. politicians behave fairly when something like this happens, right? That there is justice, that they are treated the same. What is it going to take?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I think it has to become politically toxic. I mean, it has to become politically toxic for somebody to just continue to support something. Things that we've seen. I mean, we've all gone through collective trauma this past 11 months. We've seen images and our kids have seen images that no human being should see. And our sense of fitra tells us that this is horrible, this is horrific, and this is not normal for us to witness. And our eyes are not lying to us. And I think the vast majority of people out there understand that our eyes are not lying to us at this point. But at the end of the day, the people within the party machinery and the leadership within these parties, they don't think that it's politically toxic to take these positions. You saw, this Vedant Patel and the Matthew Millers of the world who are standing in front of, people, and they just spit out the talking points because they don't feel like they're going to lose anything. But
Right.
there has to be a tipping point where supporting a genocide, supporting it's happening on a world scale already. And you've seen changes already happening in places like the UK, where the elections, you see, pro-Palestine and Muslim candidates that are winning in these areas. But there has to be a tipping point where this is politically unacceptable. We're living through a very historic time where we've witnessed one of the worst atrocities, and it's been broadcast in front of our eyes. So we cannot let these people forget it, and we have to continuously remind them.
Absolutely. And subhanAllah, exactly what you said about being politically toxic. We have failed to punish this behavior politically, right? And as long as we fail to punish it, we really can't expect anything different. That exactly what you said. It has to be so, we have to get to a point and reverse engineer it. What are all the steps to make it so politically costly to support the occupation of Palestine that no politician would touch it unless they were crazy and they wanted to lose an election. But until we get to that point, we don't ultimately have any right to expect anything differently. And I don't think we're going to see anything different. So, this is a super important dynamic with the upcoming election. And, people are trying to, okay, get back in line. Muslims, get back in line. Don't make too much noise. But there's going to come a tipping point where we bite the bullet and we basically say, this is our red line. This is where you stop pushing us around. And we will tolerate short-term harm for a long-term gain if it means actually stopping, making people respect us and realizing that you can't just do anything to us. Any comment on that, or any other final points that you'd like to add before departing?
Yeah, I mean,
Imran?
I agree with you. I think we just got to continue, specifically on this story. I think, continue to make noise with these people. When you see, these mouthpieces have a separate system of humanity for a person like Aysenur or other Muslims that have been killed, or those who have been victimized by the genocide, we've got to continue to push them forward. And that means your elected officials as well. For those of you who are in the US, why hasn't your member of Congress issued a statement? This is an American, like if this is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, as they purport to be, then we have to hold them accountable. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot of work, and I think we as a community have to be strategic. We have to continue, like, the ulama and the activists. We have to get together. We have to also have some type of sessions like this where we sit down together and really strategize, like on a granular level, how we plot out the political power of this community. And so that's something we're trying to do from a CAIR perspective. I know that there's many nascent organizations that are starting, and Yaqeen is doing some great work in terms of the education. So inshallah, we'll be able to continue the conversation with you all, and I'm always happy to come and join you all as well.
Look forward to it, Imran. I agree. We are all we have, right? After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have us. Allah gave us each other to plot our way out of this mess. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I look for a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to following up with you at some point and continuing the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Imran.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So there you have it, folks. Now we have some, I see that the guys in the studio have prepared some other things that we've discussed. Okay. When we talk about reflection on Sister Aysenur's legacy and her martyrdom. So let's just bring up real quick that tweet from the Republican congressman. Okay. He's from Florida, which wouldn't shock a lot of people. No offense to our wonderful people from Florida, but we know that some of the politicians in Florida be wilding out a little bit. So he said one less Muslim terrorist, and then he did a hashtag, I know, fire away, and these sorts of things. And just to expose the corruption, do you like whether this person is a true believer, he's ideologically motivated or not? The only type of person that acts like this is a person who does not fear any consequences for acting like this. and Muslims will not stop being humiliated until we organize and impose political consequences for acting and speaking like this. So that's an extremely important thing to keep in mind. And you have to consider, from everything you do, from how you vote in November to everything that you do locally and politically to build power, where you put your money, as we were discussing with Brother Imran, what are you doing to create a scenario in which it is politically costly for people so people can't get away with this sort of stuff. We also, I think, have a quote from Aysenur. Can we run that, guys? Okay, so I highly encouraged, by the way, our dear brother Muhammad Jalal from the Thinking Muslim in London, in the UK, has a great write-up on martyrdom. He offers his reflections, Aysenur, Ezgi, Eygi, and notes on martyrdom. Read it. It's really, and she's holding a quote there. You can really tell, subhanAllah, you can tell that, I mean, I didn't know the sister personally, but she is super smart. And you can tell that she is super sharp. When you look at sort of at such a young age as well, like all the things that she was taking into account, she understood international solidarity. She understood the way that many issues intersect, and she was fearless. SubhanAllah. May Allah have mercy on her. Okay. So what that card says that she's holding is wasat. So she's talking about, the Allah's statement in the Quran about being ummatan wasatan. Wasat to me is the ummah I need to support my journey in full submission to Allah. A community, dedicated to supporting each other to the straight path. And that's your sister and her advice to you. So may we all live up to that. Now, subhanAllah, when I was reviewing the Quran and thinking about what was going on this past week, these verses came to mind, and we've talked about them before, but I want to bring them up to look at them, how they fit together. They're verses you've heard before, but as we know, sometimes even the companions that happened to them, that things you've heard before and things that you know, when different scenarios happen and play out, they take on new meaning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is true, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا. Don't say, or don't even think, that those who have been killed in the way of Allah are dead. بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. That they are, instead they are alive. That Aysenur is more alive than you and me right now. That she has witnessed, as a shahida, somebody who has witnessed the reality and gone through the steps, that she is more alive than you or I are alive right now. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَرِحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. That pleased, she is pleased, they are pleased, the martyrs are pleased by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them of His bounty. وَيَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. That the martyrs of old, all of them, all the way back, are gladdened by the martyrs of today, and are, we have a translation here on, they're receiving good tidings about those who will be martyred after them. So even the people that will come later, that after Aysenur will be gladdened by the fact that there are other people who are going to be joining her. أَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. This is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next ayah, okay? Because we're going somewhere with this, okay? يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Okay, they receive good tidings and favor from Allah and bounty, and Allah does not allow the reward of believers to be lost. Those believers who respond to Allah and the Messenger after injury has struck them. And I found that significant when going after these ayat. الَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَصَابَهُمُ الْقَرْحِ. That we understand that there is going to be pain. They understand there is going to be loss. We understand that there are going to be martyrs, that we understand there are people going to be arrested, people are going to be thrown into jail, people are going to be put in solitary confinement. This is the dunya. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the dunya is a prison for the believer, and it is Jannah for the denier, the rejecter. Sometimes we act as if we want Jannah right now. If you want to stand up for what Allah loves, if you want to do something for Palestine and work towards a free and just Palestine, then you need to be ready to sacrifice. And you need to be ready to sacrifice everything. That this is a celebration of Aysenur's success, Aysenur's victory. And what is on you and me now is to follow in her example of her willingness to sacrifice and to do it gladly, realizing that the dunya is absolutely nothing. Go to the next one. Now, This is amazing that this ayah comes after this, and this is the last ayah we're going to end on. The last ayah in this tarkib at the end of the page, if you're using the Medina Mus'haf, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ. That Allah is contrasting this person, the martyr, somebody like Aysenur, with somebody who they are hypocritical. They have disease in their hearts. They love the dunya too much. What's that person's attitude? They run to us and they try to spread fear. They try to spread fear. They're fear mongers at the end of the day. And they say to everybody, Inna nasa qad jama'a lakum fakhshawhum. Look at how much people you're up against. Look at how many people, how much money they have, how strong they are. You'll never change anything. You'll never do anything. You better just fall in line and do this thing and save your own self. If you look in the Quran, that is the attitude of the hypocrites. Time and time and time again. Just save yourself. We're afraid of fitna. And then Allah says, Ala fil fitnati saqatu. We didn't go out and sacrifice everything because we were afraid of falling into fitna. No, you just fell into fitna. That is the attitude of the hypocrites, to succumb to fear. The attitude of the martyr, the attitude of those who Allah is pleased with, is the opposite. فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَ اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. That they understand that no matter what they are up against, no matter the odds, Allah is in control. Nobody is in ultimate control other than Allah. And if the situation happens, if Allah had decreed it, that you or I have to die for a good cause, then alhamdulillah, Allah has decreed for us good. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us husn al-khatimah. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us a good end. And we rejoice and consider ourselves among the successful. So this attitude shift is absolutely important, and you're going to see a lot of people that are cowards, and that's just facts. Sorry, I have to say it bluntly. You're going to see a lot of people now come out now between now and November, now and after November, that in their hearts they are afraid, and they will come to you like this. This is what they're essentially saying to you. Look at all of what you're up against. Don't be brazen. Don't be too idealistic. Don't be impractical. The practical way is to take the deal. The practical way is to support first and then hope for some crumbs later. And that's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. I know there's probably a lot of people pinging us in the chat. Let's go see what we've got here. We've got some people from Minnesota. Welcome. Sada says their dead are in hell while ours are in heaven. Allahu Akbar. Completely true. Their dead are in hell and ours are in heaven. Ameen. Letitia says, may Allah grant victory to all the oppressed and get rid of the evil oppressors. Ameen, Ya Rab. Salmon roll. Assalamu alaikum assalam from Malaysia. Awesome username. Salmon rolls are delicious. Ryan Christian, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullah. You saw me in Houston. I'm glad that we were able to catch each other. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah accept. Watermelon 786 hits on it perfectly. Yes, the attitude of the government is Israel first, even before American lives. 100%. That is what they are teaching us. And their stock holdings, like Fatima points out. People pointing out the lack of accountability about the murderer investigating himself. Exactly it. You guys are sharp. Relying on Israeli findings. Exactly. Yeah, it makes my blood boil too, Zahir. Be happy puts it nice. This guy is the epitome. You're talking about the White House correspondent or the White House representative, the epitome of a habitual gaslighter, a mouthpiece for Zionist. He will get what is due to him very soon, inshallah. Yes, and Iman also anticipated us talking about the Turkish origin in order to sort of distance herself from being an American who presumably their life would matter. But even if she's an American, her life doesn't matter because it's not lucrative. It goes against the lucrative Zionist project. Yes, Shema, they only care about their own interests. And I want to put this out here. Nusayba, you win. You win, Nusayba. Put this up. What's worse is that Muslims amongst us would still pursue lucrative careers in Raytheon and others, such as Lockheed Martin, saying that deen and dunya are separate. Put it up in lights. 100% correct, Nusayba. Thank you so much for pointing that out. How can we expect anything to change when we don't hold our own accountable? When we look and see someone's working for the Department of Defense who's signing off on all of these arms shipments going abroad, and we see that as a success. Nobody will question you at the iftar parties and say, oh, mashallah, he works at the Department of Defense. Mashallah, tabarakallah. Astaghfirullah. This is something that is a shame. It's aib. It's a shame on the Muslim community that we would be so addicted to this dunya and so addicted to status that we turn our nose down at someone with a humble halal job, whether they're a janitor, a street sweeper, or anything, and we would praise somebody and not find it problematic for somebody to be responsible for the murder of Muslims across the world. Where are our priorities? We have to fix that first. I completely agree that. Mariam has another good point. It's not just that Muslims don't get the same treatment. We are accused without proof. And Israel, yes, well said, is defended despite the proof, 100%. Shai David I can say that the Columbia students are terrorists with no proof, and their academic jobs can be, put into jeopardy. And we can have all the proof in the world against the IDF, and it doesn't mean anything. A Qadri is right. They will not value our voice until we withhold our vote and our support. Yes, agreed. Iman brings up a good point. Yes, that Israel tells us who they are. Rachel Corrie was run over by a bulldozer, and after her death, Zionists made pancakes with her face and mocked her. What have we seen the last 11 months? Yes, Madiha, that's a good point as well. Just trying to run through the chat. We got a lot of things. The Israeli exception. That's a nice term for it, a Qadri. The Israeli exception. Seamus brings up a good point. Seamus says politically, the Muslim community is very reactive and not proactive, unfortunately. However, I will like to say I do have hope that the future is going to change, and I have two reasons. The last 11 months, I've seen a huge shift, and a lot of people have started paying attention, and they're open to new ideas. Secondly, I have seen the youth, the Muslim youth of this country, and I have high hopes for them. They are people who are not content with the Biryani diplomacy. They're not content to do what everybody has been doing for the last 20, 30, 40 years. That hasn't gotten us anything, to be frank, has not gotten us anything. And stay tuned. Inshallah ta'ala, next week, my blog piece will drop going in on Biryani diplomacy and going in on how accepting our failure politically is an essential first step to getting it done, to changing it. Now, Madiha says, I don't agree. We will never be able to out-donor AIPAC. And I want you to put that comment up here because she's not wrong. Madiha, you're not wrong. However, will we have to out-donor AIPAC? Okay. The truth requires a lot less support than falsehood. Falsehood requires so much work, so much money, so much bribery and buying people off to prop it up. But the truth, it has grassroots support. It has automatic support. Once it's a ball rolling downhill, it will have much more momentum. I agree, Madiha, in her next comment. We need to work towards outlawing corporate donations. I completely agree with that. Citizens United has to be reversed. The entire election law has to be revised. And I think that this is, I know it's not a attractive, right, political issue to get involved in. Dealing with the issues of immigration and other issues are much more kept front and center for us. But I really do think that strategically, one of the places where Muslim Americans should start directing their political attention and building a coalition around is electoral reform. Because if you can change the way that decisions are made, you change the entire terrain. If you change just one decision, okay, you've changed that one decision. But if you change the way that decisions are made, you change 100 decisions. Omar Delan asks, I feel that I'm not doing enough for those suffering. How can we set an expectation for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us to be doing for? How do we know we're doing enough? to not be held accountable on the day of judgment. I mean, I think it just has to be, first of all, you have your heart, okay? You have, what do you feel? Does this keep you up at night? Okay, now you don't want to numb yourself with, like, we talked about that last week. However, you should feel angry. You should feel disturbed. You should feel frustrated. These are perfectly acceptable feelings. Now, what can you do, or what is expected of you? It depends on your capacity, right? Anybody who has a higher capacity has a higher responsibility. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, if you see a munkar, if you see something that is evil, change it with your hand. Change it with your hand. Whatever you're able to change with your hand, whether it's in your family, it's in your job, it's at, like with people who are around you, social media, whatever, then you have that responsibility to change it with your hand. And if you can't, then with your speech and what you say and what you write and even things. And then if not, then at least you hate it in your heart. Yes, Valerie, I also agree. Thinking Muslim, he's the man. Actually, stay tuned for this, guys. Crossover coming up. In October, Mohammed Jalal is going to be coming to the U.S. in build up to the elections, and we're going to be doing an interview. Inshallah, I'll be doing an interview with him, and he's going to be interviewing other people. So much love to our brother Mohammed Jalal. May Allah protect him and his family. Selma Z asks, I wonder if there's legal ground for Aysenur's parents to sue that congressman from Florida. Whether there is or isn't, I think, unfortunately, an even larger question or a larger issue is, what is the atmosphere that has created it, is that the atmosphere that has made it possible to say such things in the first place, right? Again, someone who says that does not fear being politically punished. They think that they're going to get away with it. We have to make sure they don't get away with it, whether it's through a law, which I'm kind of, I guess, pessimistic about that, because the law is sort of not neutral. But even just when it comes to votes and donations and things like that. Yeah, that's true. Iraj Khan demonstrates the lengths that the Biden administration will go to make it seem like an accident, right? This is getting to be like the guy who accidentally ate a shawarma while he was fasting, right? He fell on the ground and the shawarma just fell into his mouth, right? That's basically what the Biden administration and the government is telling us when it comes to people who are obviously murdered. Mohammed Fatouh asks, do you think America is manipulated by Israel, or that America merely shares their interests? Example, I don't buy that Israel violated Joe Biden's red line, but that it was all just play. Yeah, I agree with you in that particular example, definitely. I think it's both. I think that, and there are public statements from Netanyahu and others that demonstrate that they find Americans very gullible, and American politicians very, very gullible and easy to manipulate. Like, that's publicly available information. However, it is true that American politicians, the scenario right now, again, is that it's very lucrative to support the racket that is the Israeli occupation of Palestine. It is a way to launder money. It's a way to make tons of money on stocks. It's a way to make tons of money in the weapons industry, tech, AI, all these sorts of cutting edge technologies that are tried out on Palestinians, right? Like, this is a huge cash cow for a lot of people in the US government. There's other people who are ideologically motivated, and so there's a share of interest in that way. But definitely, Israel manipulates the United States, their politicians, and their law. The Israel has been shaping U.S. law since the 60s when it comes to attempting to shape language and craft language that will criminalize the PLO first and then other factions later. And this is where the United States gets its anti-terror laws from. If you look in the books, and I'm working on some things that'll come out hopefully before too long, that will show the lineage. And I think there's other articles out there that show the lineage of laws in the United States that are supposedly anti-terror laws. They are almost handed to us from Israel, specifically with the PLO and resistors to the Israeli occupation at the same time. So it's both. Abdullah asks, how can we eliminate the fear in our hearts by causing our loved ones distress if we are martyred or suffer loss? I don't have a question to that. I don't have an answer to that question, Abdullah. Sometimes you might feel guilty by that. I agree. But I don't know. We believe that Allah is Ar-Razaq. That's all I can say. We believe that Allah has determined our wealth and where it's coming from and every single penny that we're going to get. So that too is part of our test. Zahir says, her legacy calls upon us to unite and amplify our voices and work tirelessly for meaningful change. Yes. Salmon Roll, do you have any comments regarding the protests against the Weapons Expo in Melbourne, Australia? I did not see the Weapons Expo or the protests, so I need to know more information about it before commenting. Okay, making our way through the comments. Good point, Mariam. Mariam says it very well. Our battle is that of conviction and belief. If we recalibrate and readjust our polluted perception of dunya in accordance to Quran and Sunnah, we'll overcome the centuries-old regress, inshallah. I agree. Well said. Muhammad Barri, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Okay, we made it through. CM, yes, she was Muslim. 100% she was Muslim, bro. What you talking about? Ubay Abu Bakr. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, 100%. Ubay, thank you. Thank you. We need to stop normalizing Muslims joining the military and take Muhammad Ali as an example. Wallahi, there's nothing that makes me more sick than to see Muslims taking pride in their sons and daughters being tools for the imperialistic foreign policy of the United States. And perhaps being in a situation where they would murder other Muslims for no good reason other than to, again, continue the racket that is the military-industrial complex and U.S. elite financial interests abroad. That is a stain, honestly. And if the shoe fits, wear it. Let's just say this. If you were organizing a conference or you were involved in some way in inviting somebody that matches this description, then if the shoe fits, wear it. Iman asks, what are your thoughts on loyalty oath law that forbid boycotting or criticizing Israel enacted in several states? Can it be reversed? Absolutely. Listen, here's one thing we have to understand. Everything can be reversed. Okay? What happened when Roe versus Wade was passed? The Catholics plotted for 50 years to reverse Roe versus Wade. If Roe versus Wade can be reversed, we can reverse anything. So people misunderstand and they think that law is just like etched in stone and that, no, like the way that law is crafted, the way it's interpreted, the way it's applied are all battlegrounds. They call this lawfare, right? That is where we need to also be directing our attention. And this is where we need something like a CAIR, the UK organization. We have CAIR, but CAIR, for the most part, they work on anti-discrimination law. I'm not aware of any sort of thing that they're doing that is, I'll put it this way. We need organizations that are explicitly going to look to crafting the law and changing the terrain of the law, okay? Not just operating within the law, okay? But looking for how we can shift it in the future. So these types of loyalty oath laws and Sharia is haram, Sharia is haram. For them, right? They're haram for them. They're going to make illegal the Sharia, or you're not allowed to have halal meat, or all these different things. These are purity tests that Zionists keep the politicians busy with. And if we were smart, we would do something similar. Like every single thing that happens, just like Brother Imran said, are you going to put out a statement? Are you going to do this? Here's something to vote on. Here's something to vote on. They put measures into Congress that they don't even plan on getting, that are purely symbolic, right? They don't have any enforceable action, but they do it in order to test the waters to see who is supporting them and who is not, so that they know who to primary and who to go after. That is how politics works right now. And we have to get in the game. So yeah, it can be reversed and it has to be reversed, Iman. Okay, so Simon Roll is educating me regarding the Melbourne Weapons Expo. Pro-Palestinian activists and anti-war protesters gathered to protest the role of the displayed weapons in global conflicts, particularly Gaza. Protesters accused companies at the expo, especially Israeli firms, of profiting from violence against civilians. Well, that's 100% right. That's 100% right. I mean, the entire military industry is implicated in these conflicts and others, especially in the occupation of Palestine. And weapons are one of the biggest industries in the world, one of the most lucrative industries in the world. And we absolutely have to not normalize it. We have to stop it from being normal. People just coming here, and showing their weapons as some expo, as if it's like a tech expo, and these weapons are now going to end up being turned on our brothers and sisters abroad. That's absolutely uncalled for, and we have to stop it. So props to them, to the protesters. Zahir asks, what role can religious leaders and scholars play in ensuring that the legacy of martyrs like Aysenur is used to promote peace and reconciliation rather than further division? By peace and reconciliation, I infer from how you phrase your comment that you mean within the Muslim community. Because as we know, quote unquote, peace and reconciliation is often the term that is used for gaslighting us when it comes to foreign policy. The so-called peace process in Palestine was a sham. It was only meant to give political cover to taking more Palestinian land and delaying and subverting, sort of dividing the Palestinian sort of factions and resistance and things like that, to create this dynamic of good Muslim, good Palestinian, bad Palestinian. These are the good Palestinians that we'll work with. They're the ones who are amenable to Israeli interests, such as the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas and others. And the bad Muslims and the bad Palestinians are the ones who are outside of that. So that's not the type of peace and reconciliation we want, right? What we want is religious leaders demonstrating courage, standing up for the legacy of Aysenur, calling out their government officials, and helping guide their community to a sensible, reasonable political strategy that will create a scenario in which, just like Brother Imran said, supporting Zionism is toxic. Letitia asks, why do Americans think they should only vote either Democrat or Republican? I think if there is no suitable candidate, just don't vote. Or protest vote for somebody else. Yes, 100% you're right. Because people misunderstand what voting is for. I had a sister approach me with a question in Houston last weekend, and she was having this dilemma. She's like, well, I want my vote to count. And I had to tell her, like, sister, do you realize that the process of appointing the president of the United States is not through popular vote? It is through the Electoral College. Your vote, strictly speaking, doesn't matter in the way that you think it does, in the sense that your vote does not actually put somebody in power. The Electoral College and the elites put people in power. They've made sure to put safety valves and escape hatches in order to make sure that you don't have too much power. Okay? What is the election for? What does your vote do then? Your vote is an exercise demonstrating your ability to organize. Okay? When it comes to the Muslim American community, this is why I say it's better than staying home from voting. I don't think that staying home is necessarily the best thing, because we need a quantifiable way to register our dissent and a quantifiable way to register that we are not happy, and not just Muslims. Do you know that the majority of voters in the United States of America are independent? They are neither Republican or Democrat. However, you would never know that, because the way that the legacy media talks about it, it only talks about it in terms of the two parties. The two parties are bought by the elite interests, and they don't want that to get out. They don't want the people uniting behind a third party option or a different option, because that wrecks it for them. This is just like Coke and Pepsi, right? Colluding. They set the prices themselves. They are very, very similar. They're hardly distinguishable whatsoever. The entire sort of interest of the elite in the United States of America, the political elite, revolves around the chokehold of the two-party system. So they want you to think that your vote doesn't have any say, or you don't have a say, or at all, your vote doesn't count, or these types of things. And until we act otherwise, courageously, boldly, then it's just going to be the same situation over and over again. Is America and Israel preparing for Dajjal right now? I don't know, Habibi. I don't know. Hey, Ali, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It might not be that deep, CM. It might just be about interests. But anyway, we need to move on to our next segment. We've got some current events. Thank you, everybody. Excellent commentary as usual. We have a very special segment of the Ummah that watches this program, and I really cherish your questions and your commentary. Moving on to current events, we're talking about sort of the differences between governments and their populaces. Well, that is on display very, very strongly in the Middle East, where we've seen sort of wildcat acts of violence against IDF soldiers. Okay, there was a gunman in Jordan, or a Jordanian gunman, who he gunned down 3 guards at the West Bank crossing. And this is an indication that the Jordanian people, who we know, and we've seen the protests, the Jordanian people are with the people of Palestine. However, it is the government of Jordan that holds them back. Time and time again. So you see the Jordanian government's reaction. They condemn the attack. It was just an individual. Please, Israel, don't think that this is the changing policy on us. It was just a lone wolf, a lone actor. He has nothing to do. Nahnu bari minhum. We're free from them. We have nothing to do with them. Look at how controlled they are by Western and Israeli interests. Of course, they coordinated with Israeli authorities to investigate and retrieve the body, and they're using the word escalation as a scare tactic to basically say, we don't want this type of behavior anymore. Now, in the public, of course, he's treated as a hero, okay, because he had the courage to do something that even his government didn't have the courage to do. Many people who viewed it permissible, there's a difference of opinion, but they led Salat al-Ghaib, they prayed janazah prayer over him in absentia, and of course, they criticized the government of Israel, the government of Jordan for siding with Israel. May Allah accept him as a martyr. To be honest, his name was Maher Diab Hussein al-Jazi, 39-year-old Jordanian citizen from southern Jordan. He drove his truck to the crossing. He got out of his truck and he unloaded. We've got some comments. We covered that already. Okay, good. MashaAllah. Let's see. Iman says 2 Moldavian women were arrested for protesting in front of various embassies and their residences. Religiously, ambassadors are people given protection. Does this mean we should not protest against them? Sorry, I'm trying to follow here. They're protesting in front of embassies. Religious ambassadors are people given protection. Sorry, Iman, I don't understand the question. Who should we not protest against? I lost it. Madiha points out AOC smearing Jill Stein means they would rather you stay home. Yes, thank you, Madiha. Good point. They would much rather you stay home because they're not going to report on how many people didn't vote. You never hear about voter turnout, which in some elections is quite low, right? What you're only going to see is so many percent voted over here, so many percent voted over there, so many percent voted over here. Okay, so that's how they also control that narrative. Nusrat Ghori asks, what do you recommend subject children should read in college to have political knowledge? They have to take a lot of electives besides their major. Nusrat, I'm offended by your question because it presupposes that they can't be political science majors. And I was a political science major. So we need more political science majors. Break the trinity. Break the trinity of doctor, lawyer, engineer. That's what the trinity in the Muslim American community. It doesn't make any sense. Strategically, first of all, doctor, lawyer, engineer, you're not as powerful. You're just an employee. Okay. And what good has being just an employee done us when it comes to Palestine? Not very much. If you want political understanding, then you should be a political science major. You should go into political theory and do these things and study these things, and you will understand. We have a very, very low political IQ in the Muslim American community. Your average doctor, lawyer, engineer is not going to be able to figure out a political strategy, right? And that's no shade to them. They can save people when they have a heart attack, and they can build bridges, and they can, litigate and help us out legally. But when it comes to political strategy, we need more people from the Muslim community, bright minds, valedictorians, people who ace their test. Straight A students, we need them in political science. We need them in other areas as well. A Qadri hits it on the head as usual. My observation of American Muslims, I'll let you read it. True. Okay, so Iman's trying to make me understand. In Islam, ambassadors are people given protection by the leader of their nation. So does that mean that people of the nation can't protest? No, you're not attacking them. This is a protest. Protest is your demonstration of your disapproval. So this is not analogous whatsoever to attacking messengers or ambassadors or things like that. And in fact, you're not even necessarily, now there's a situation if you're like throwing objects at an ambassador, this is something that is, then you could say maybe you have an argument. But when it comes to, protesting at an embassy or protesting an ambassador, you're really protesting the government because they're a representative of the government. And that's something that is understood politically as normal. Yeah, you see AOC and the other supposed progressive Democrats that people even Muslims used to be so in love with going hard against Jill Stein and trying to scare Muslims into running back to our genociders. Hey, Qadri, you're a disappointment. No, I'm just kidding. You're not a disappointment. We love you. But you were political science, but then ended up in finance. That LOL, I imagine like a tear rolling down your cheek when you say that LOL. There we go. We got Abdullah. Yes, we need filmmakers. We need educators. We need educative administrators. We need people writing curriculum. We will not survive or thrive as a community unless we have people covering all bases. So let your children be filmmakers. Abdullah will take care of you. Yes, Ada. Parents will say, then what can you do with that anyway? I'm living proof. Do we believe Allah is Ar-Razak or no? Do we, like, seriously, billahi alaykum, do we believe that Allah is Ar-Razak? We act as if becoming an art major or becoming a major in the humanities is like, have you met somebody who's homeless? Like, I really want to know. Like, I've never seen a Muslim who their kid lives on the street in a tent because they decided to major in the humanities or political science or anything like that. 100% Sada. Imam Tom, Mariam says, could you recommend a few fundamental books on politics, political science to build a decent base? Let me think about it. There's definitely a lot, but I have to think about it to make it concise, because I could just start rapping off things off the top of my head, but I would like it to be concise. Very good. Excellent stuff. Like Sada says, Allah always exposing people to Asada. Last 11 months, Allah has done us the favor of showing us people's true colors, whether it's our own community or elsewise. There is no pretending anymore. Okay? And so it's up to us to realize it. Exactly. Neutrina says, Walaikum salam, I believe the recent trend in most votes is that if every opinion is counted, did not vote would win. Yes, you're right. It seems to be a trend across the globe. People have stopped drinking the Kool-Aid. Yes, however, the problem with that is, Neutrino, that does not translate into political power. And this is one of the things that actually exposes the lies of liberalism, okay? Because liberalism is, among other things, predicated upon this idea of social contract theory. John Locke and others wrote about it. This idea that we enter into an agreement with the nation state, we give up some of our rights so that we receive protection, and the government is responsive to us. I ask you sincerely, if everybody stayed home and didn't vote, would the government say, well, I guess we don't have any popular support, I guess we have to quit? No, it's never going to happen. Okay, so that's a nice idea, and it was a nice justification for the nation state, but it's not descriptive of actual reality. The actual reality is that the nation state is about force, okay, and it's about exercising a monopoly of force and violence, which it is what it is. Every nation state is like that, but we don't do ourselves any favors by pretending that it's not. So if that's the reality, then does not voting really do anything? Well, voting doesn't do a whole lot either. Don't be tricked into that. But registering your vote in a strategic way in order to sort of at least take away the two-party monopoly is probably a good place to start. 100%, Iman. 100%. All right, let's go on. Now, we've got some other things that I suggest that you read, talking about reading suggestions. We have a blog piece. We do have a blog piece at Yaqeen Institute about martyrdom. Okay, the martyrs of Gaza are soaring in the heavens. I recommend, this is by Dr. Omar Suleiman. I recommend it. It's something if you have to brush up on what it is to be a martyr in Islam, what are the sort of the reward of a martyr, like what's the attitude of a martyr, then you can go to that. We'll drop that. Try to drop it in the description or even the chat so that you can open that up and review it. And we also had a very, very nice guest article for Al Jazeera drop today. Dr. Omar Suleiman at it again. Very, very prolific op-ed writer and an effective op-ed writer. I highly recommend you read this. Israel continues to kill Americans with impunity. It just dropped this morning. So if we could also, gentlemen, in the studio, link to that somewhere, either in the chat or in the description. And with that, let's do some tafsir. Potpourri says we should have more media-related strategies to counter the propaganda. 100% right. And one of the great organizations that has come out of the last 11 months is the Unity Lab out of California. They have been doing work with billboards in very, very busy places in Times Square in New York, and also in New Jersey, and also in LA. They have made such a dent and such a, what do I say? They have made such waves that now they're being targeted by Zionists because they're afraid. Because they run billboards saying things like, stop funding Israel, this is how much Israel's been getting, and it's starting to make a difference. It's starting to actually get to people. So they're trying to be, they're going through being doxxed and things like that. So if you check out, if you're looking for a place to worship Allah through your money, there's many good causes. Unity Lab is one of them. I know the people who run it. They do good work. Yes, Ekadri brings up a good point. The Sirah, 100%. But MB, I will say this. When we talk about the Sirah and the Quran, we need to have scholars that are going to tease out the political implications. And that's a lot of the work that I've been doing over the past 10 months. And you're going to see a lot more stuff being published soon, inshallah. Sada says, nation state only accepts your religion as long as they're okay with it. Otherwise, it's a no-go. The deen is being forced to submit to the state, 100%. You know, I have a feeling that you've seen my videos on blogging theology. A. Qadri says, yes, that's also why I love this generation. This generation's fearless, the generation coming up. Yeah, but let Canary Mission, Sada, let Canary Mission do what they, I got my Canary Mission profile in my, last week or 2 weeks ago. Let them do it. Let them do it. You know, it's like, وَلَا نَخَافُ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. Like, we're not afraid anymore. Back in the days before social media, this stuff had a lot more power because you weren't able to tell who else was being doxxed. You were very alone. And so they get you to self-censor because you feel like you're the only one going through it. Now we're able to link up and to support each other and to expose the exposers and to watch the watchers. All right, Tafsir, let's go. What do we have this week? We have Surah Ikhlas. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Surah you all know and love. When you're, in your salah, it's one of the go-tos. Say, He, Allah, is one, the eternal. He does not beget, nor was he begotten, and no one is comparable to him. So we started the poll. Okay, there's a poll. What is the unique word? What is the unique word that is found in Surah Al-Ikhlas of the choices that you have? That's good to hear, Sada. Glad that you're watching those. I have to get back to, if Paul, if you're watching, I owe you a text. Sorry about that. I have to. We have to keep going with restating Orientalism. I've been very, very busy, but I owe him another session. Give a couple minutes for the poll. One of the mistakes, I'll say this about reading in political science and political theory. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that you just have to read the classics. Like now you have to read everything by Locke and everything by Rawls and everything by, Marx and everything by, you'll never finish. One of the important things about getting familiar with any discipline is to lock in on the most important works and the works that will save you from reading other works. Okay, so that's how you are efficient when you're covering ground. So for example, you can understand a lot of Foucault by reading Talal Asad. Okay, Asad is based on a lot of Foucault's thought. If you read Sabah Mahmoud, you can understand Judith Butler without necessarily reading Judith Butler, which is not very fun to do, by the way. Sabah Mahmoud, may Allah have mercy on her, is a lot more fun to read. So those sort of strategies, but I'll give it some thought and try to come up with a sort of a syllabus or curriculum. All right, poll is done. Here we go. We have 3 choices: As-Samad, Yakun, or Qul. We had 81%. We take it easy on you guys, to be honest with you. I mean, this is a pretty easy question. As-Samad, 81% of people said that As-Samad is the unique word. They would be correct. 15% said Yakun, which is not correct. Allah says, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ when he's talking about Ibrahim several times throughout the Quran. And then qul, 3% of you, Allah yahdikum, said qul when we had qul in the last weeks and the weeks before. So absolutely not a unique word. But maybe you didn't understand the question. And of course, Maryam. So Maryam brings up a good point. Sorry, real quick, we'll go to this. There's the Western political tradition, which we shouldn't sleep on, just to understand it. And then there's also obviously the Islamic political tradition. When it comes to Siyasa Sharia, Ibn Taymiyyah obviously has critical works in that, Al-Mawardi. There are very important works that need to be mined and represented. Like the thing about our tradition, subhanAllah, we have so much that's there, but it needs to be extracted, distilled, repackaged, and applied to today's situation. All right, so as-samad. As-samad is a very, very unique word, not just in its occurrence in the Quran, but also in its meaning. Okay, as-samad covers a lot of different meanings that are not necessarily possible to translate within one word in English. If you go to a website that collects English translations, like Islam Awakened, you will see multiple translations for as-samad. As-samad has to do with being eternal. It also has to do with being the one whom everybody relies on. It also has to do with being the one that is self-sufficient. Okay, so there's this idea of everything returning to Allah for aid and assistance and sustenance, and Allah not needing anything else or anyone else. Okay, it also has connotations of sort of like a leader, and as I said, sort of this eternal character. So all of this is here in as-samad. Some people translate it as the absolute. Some people translate it as the self-sufficient master. You can sort of see how it charts and maps onto these sort of different connotations within the Arabic. However, for our purposes, I think that one of the significant things we were talking earlier about astaghfirullah becoming an art major or a political science major, or paying the ultimate price and going and putting yourself in a risky situation for a righteous cause, right? When we realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate authority and the eternal and the one of whom everyone depends, even when we're talking about AIPAC. Okay, we're talking about AIPAC, oh no, they have so much power. They don't really, first of all, but that's another discussion. We have to realize that everything happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ultimate power. Sometimes we get spooked by not knowing the how. We know what we want to do, right? We know what the right thing to do is. We know the issue. We know we want to support Palestine and end the Israeli occupation of Palestine, but we don't necessarily know how. Now, there's a certain degree to which we have to theorize and put our heads together and plan, but there's another sort of type of thought that maybe can get dominated by too much relying on material means. Basically not recognizing Allah's hand of providence, to use a phrase, in all of this. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deliver results in ways that you cannot anticipate. Okay, so some people, they look at the situation, they say, oh, we're too empowered, there's no possible way we're ever going to do it. That's a similar attitude, by the way, of Bani Israel. When Bani Israel was led out of Egypt by Musa alayhi salam and was led to the gates of Palestine and then were promised it, all they had to do was go in and fight and take the means, and they were promised that they would win. And what was their reaction? No, anta wa rabbuka, you and your Lord go and fight. We would rather stay home. Okay, this is an attitude that demonstrates a lack of awareness of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Okay, and it is, if you have a lack of awareness of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, you will have a lack of reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, that's the main point here. So sometimes we don't have to figure out every single thing. Some of the things, sometimes we have to just worry about knowing what the first step is. We know that we need to be righteous, we need to fear Allah alone, and we know what the first step is, and we take the first step, and then Allah will open doors in ways that we can't even perceive. You could also notice this in the attitude of Musa alayhi salam, in the story that as it's told in the Quran, where, I believe in Surah An-Naml, when he is first, or is it Shu'ara? I believe it's Shu'ara actually. Yes, it's Surah Shu'ara, where he is given his prophetic mission. At first, he demonstrates not unwillingness, but skepticism, right? He's finding all these sorts of reasons why it can't work. Now, by the end of the story, he has seen Allah's providence and Allah's sustenance and Allah's support and aid so much that when his back is up against the wall, or literally against the Red Sea, and the forces of Fir'aun are coming and his people are freaking out. They're saying, oh no, we are mudrakun, they're going to catch us. Musa alayhi salam says, no, my Lord will guide us and will guide me. And that is the type of reliance that we're looking for. So sometimes we have to realize that we have to trust in Allah, and meditating upon Allah's name, As-Samad, will help us develop that realization and also develop that reliance. Be Happy says, my son has been trying to get into the film industry for the past 20 years. He books small parts, but when he gets a good part, his part gets cut for the most stupid excuses that you can think of. Maybe you can hook up with Abdullah. Abdullah, help him out. Abdullah's going to hit the connects, inshallah. All right. We're going on almost 2 hours. Let's finish up tonight's with our personal development section on atomic habits. We had a very, very interesting chapter on the pull of social norms. But first, I want everybody, if you can, to share your experience with the homework. The homework was the idea of temptation bundling. Taking the thing that you do, that you want to do, watch Netflix, eat ice cream, right? Chocolate, whatever it is, and tying a positive habit to it. Okay? After I do that, now there's a couple ways to do it. One of the ways is after I do the thing that I have to do, then I will reward myself with doing the thing that I want to do. Okay? I do this at work all the time. Like I'll set my timer for like 20 minutes or for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour. And if I can shoot through for that amount of time without looking at any distractions, like especially when I'm writing, and today I cranked out a blog piece, right, for Yaqeen Institute, that if I'm able to sustain this with 100% focus, then I'll give myself like a 5-minute break to check messages or to, go get a snack or something like that. So did you have any experiences? Did you try this? Was it effective? What did you do? Let us know in the chat. And while you're letting us know, we'll talk about today's lesson. Abdullah trolling me with decaf. Come on, man. So today's lesson is part of making it attractive. We're under Law 2. Law 2 about building good habits, lasting habits, is making it attractive. Okay, the first is make it obvious. The second is make it attractive. And the second point about how to make it attractive is to use our social natures as human beings for us and not against ourselves. Okay? So now when it comes to the pull of social norms, he breaks it down into 3 main categories, looking at who we follow. Okay? Who do people follow and imitate in life? Like, we follow people who are close to us, number 1. That's the first category. Number 2, we follow the many, the majority. Okay? And number 3, we follow the powerful and the famous. These are the 3 main types of people that we imitate. When you see the hairstyles or the clothing styles or anything else that we have, okay, these are the types of people that you see the youth follow, and that even adults, they follow them as well. So when it comes to the close, obviously that means the people who you are around, the people you surround yourself with, okay? If you want to be a good basketball player, you need to befriend good basketball players. You need to hang out with other good basketball players. If you want to be a person who is, and I saw there was a question here about from a Muslima's point of view, if you want to get closer to the deen and learn Islam, socially, you should surround yourself with other people who have that same goal, who also want to learn about Islam. It will become very, very easy and automatic to do so, okay? If you want to be a good student, just good at studying, then you're not going to hang out with the flunkies, the people who don't take their studies seriously. You need to hang out with people who are serious students, and so on and so forth. The second, talking about the many, that people tend to follow the herd. And so you have to recognize that when you're trying to construct a habit, that the habits that go with what society is already doing are way easier to establish than than habits that cut across the grain of what society is already doing. So, for example, when beards became popular, there was a very, very distinctive time in American fashion where beards for men became very popular. And people would joke, but it was a valid point that now that the kuffar are growing out their beards, this is the perfect time, brother, you should grow out your beard too, right? Now, obviously, the hope is that the beard stays no matter what, but just to get your foot in the door, that this is a good opportunity to take advantage of, okay? If dressing modestly becomes the next big thing in American society, then the sisters who are struggling with hijab or struggling with dressing modestly, here's your chance. Now's your entry point to start doing that habit, and hopefully then the habit will stick to the point where then no matter which way society goes, it'll be easier for you as well. And then the third point about the powerful, okay? That was an interesting time, yes. And the sunnah pants, the pants that were above the ankle as well. That was kind of funny. The powerful, okay, people are addicted to success for good reasons and bad reasons, okay? There's an assumption there, and it's an assumption that Allah refutes in the Quran. There's an assumption that most people have that the people who are successful deserved it, okay? We're taught in Surah Al-Qasas the story of Qarun, who was the most successful person for Bani Israel, and yet it was because he was a sellout. And so we know that this isn't true, but unfortunately, the situation is that most people, they follow celebrity. Most people, they follow and imitate powerful people. Why do all the soccer players or the football players get imitated? Because they are seen as successful. Why do celebrities get imitated? Because they are seen as successful. So again, that's another sort of thing where we can pay attention to the good. Like there are things that can be used. For example, some of professional athletes, and I'm very critical of sort of how sports is so monetized in our society and the role it plays in our society. However, there are really interesting parallels to the discipline and the habits that professional athletes have to have with being a good Muslim. And so sometimes you can enter that door. You can say, well, I wonder how my favorite athlete approaches their day. What does their regimen look like? How do they balance their various commitments? Like you can use that for you. So this will be the homework this week. And we'll circle back to the chat and see how you did with the homework last week. But the homework for this week is going to be to befriend somebody or spend more time with somebody who is good at the thing that you want to be good at, or who has already the habit or the quality that you want to have. Okay, you understand that? So if you want to be a person of the Quran, the following week, this coming week, you need to spend some time, more time than you normally would, with somebody who is good at the Quran. Okay, that's going to be your challenge, and I'll think of something that I'll do as well. But I saw some interesting comments in the chat. Let's go back and see what people's experiments were with the previous homework. So Nusayba says, treat myself with YouTube shorts after cleaning, which I abhor. May Allah make it easy for you, Nusayba. I don't think I met anybody who likes to clean. But yeah, that's a good example. Murad says, I usually do 50-10, 50 minutes of deep work, 10 minutes to check messages. That's a good, nice, very nice. So that's a very common tactic. Ayman Talib. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from the greatest country on earth, Texas. Allahu Akbar. Coming to you from the Dallas area. Inshallah, I'll be in Dallas this coming weekend. No, astaghfirullah, 2 weekends. I apologize. Not this weekend, the following weekend. What is that? The 22nd? 21st, 22nd? Inshallah, I'll be in Dallas. So if you're in the area, maybe there's a chance to hook up. Good. Okay, A. Qadri says, I'm an extroverted introvert, so I'm trying to go to more physical halakas and then reward myself with Yemeni coffee. Yemeni coffee is a great reward for anything. MashaAllah. MB says we need to stop associating education with a college degree. 100%. Schooling gets in the way of education more often than not. You can read Paulo Freire's, what is it? Unschooling Society? Is that the book, or is that Ivan Illich? Anyway, Deschooling Society is an important book, and it shows you how the education system is kind of a racket. There are many out there with PhDs that can't think and have no knowledge, and vice versa. My father never got a college education. Very, very intelligent man. May Allah guide him to Islam. Okay, we'll end with this. Potpourri. Okay, so last chance for questions. Anybody have any questions or final thoughts? You can send them now. Potpourri says, please make dua for my son, Ali. May Allah have mercy on him and grant him Jannah al-Firdaus. Ameen. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on Ali. Sorry for your loss. May Allah make it easy for you and grant you patience. Abu Hakim Hassan, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You coming in right at the end. Anybody have any final thoughts, questions? You're also free to share your planned. Let me think. What's going to be my thing that I'm going to do? Who do I want to be more like? And who am I going to hang out more with? I want to be more like Sheikh Mohammed Shanawi. I'm going to hang out more with him this week. That'd be easy, right? Inshallah. Okay, well, there's nothing else left. We've gone for 2 hours solid. So thank you, everybody, again, for your excellent participation, your questions and your comments. Insightful as always. We will see you next week, inshallah ta'ala. I look forward to it. Until then, stay safe and take care. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Until next time, assalamu alaikum.